Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to my next team preview. I hope you're having a great start to your week. Of course, that's if you are watching this on a Monday, since I am recording it today. I'm going to go ahead and continue my team preview series. If this is your first video of mine that you're watching, basically what I have going on right now is I am looking at all 32 NFL teams as we head towards the season. I'm taking a look at the roster from the offensive side and the defensive side of the ball. As I look at those sides of the ball, I do try to give it a fantasy football twist as far as fantasy football relevant players that I would be considering drafting or adding to my team and how I think their year could go. And of course, I give you my thoughts on how the offense will perform, how the defense will perform, and then how the team I think will perform as a whole. A couple things to note on this is if you guys do see these projected starters, that is from the Prospect Encyclopedia. For those that are new to my YouTube channel and are unaware what the Prospect Encyclopedia is, that's basically a brain, it's an idea that came from my boy Roy Countryman. It's his work. It's the Roy Countryman's Prospect Encyclopedia. Basically, it's a book that's written on all 32 NFL teams. It's a top 22 prospect list per team. In order for those players to make that top 22 list, they have to be from the last 3 draft classes, and they have to have 12 starts or less on their resume. So these are blooming guys that we think that could be either, they could be the next star in the league, the next great role player in the league, or like a next solid backup in the league. Either way, they are highly thought of as potential NFL prospects. So if you see a star next to anybody's name in these videos, that means they are in that Prospect Encyclopedia, and you can go pre-order it right now at allaccessfootball.com. And you can read a scouting report once that gets released. It's supposed to be coming out here in this next month of August. So I want to go ahead and get into this video. Again, I am speaking about the Atlanta Falcons today. As far as the Atlanta Falcons, we'll have to see if they can bounce back. They've been one of the most, I guess you could say, consistent teams over the last year as far as winning. They're always pretty much competitive every year. They've been on the downside the last couple of years in the final couple of years of Dan Quinn, but that's because it seemed from the outside looking in, it sounds like maybe things kind of got stale in Atlanta. And then of course they were battling a lot of injuries, specifically on that defense, and things just didn't work out. It was just time for a regime change. They got rid of Thomas Dimitroff. They got rid of Dan Quinn. And now they got their new head coach, Arthur Smith, who has been successful as an offensive coordinator, for the past 3 years at Tennessee. It will be interesting to see how this all translates over to Atlanta. Obviously, Mike Davis is no Derrick Henry, but you would think maybe that he'll be bringing some of that rushing attack from Tennessee over. And it will be interesting to see if he can handle the duties of being a full-time head coach. Yes, if those don't know, Arthur Smith is actually the son of the guy that created FedEx. So maybe I'm sure he brings some of that like CEO qualities, so CEO traits from his dad. I wonder if that's going to kind of translate over to that role, because everybody knows when you're the head coach, you're not just maybe a casual fan gets confused and think the head coach is calling every defensive play, offensive play. No, a good head coach is a CEO that lets his coaches do their job, and he just helps manage and he helps motivate, and he just makes sure that his team is prepared on game day. So I think Arthur Smith maybe can possibly do that. Of course, we're gonna have to see that, because everybody, they can have a good resume, but we'll have to see how they can do it when they get that role. But I think I'm gonna give Arthur Chance a fair chance here in Atlanta. I hope he does I hope he does they do give him time, because yes, he is in a competitive division. But I think Atlanta's, even though they are on the downside, I think they can quickly turn this thing around within the next 2 to 3 years, because they do got some good young pieces in place to do so. So yeah, let's go ahead and get this going. I'm gonna go ahead and take a look at their current cap situation and guys that are entering a contract here. Their current cap space, they got $7.9 million in cap space right now. So they got a little room to work with before the season starts. Obviously, they want to save some of that just in case any injuries were to pile up throughout the year. But if you look at some notable players entering a contract year, the name that screams to me is Foyside Oluokun. He's I think the 2018 draft class. He really came on strong last year. I know when we were when I was with Blitzalytics, we were doing the happy hour show where we talked about the Prospect Encyclopedia Players of the Week. And he was in last year's edition of the book. And he was a guy I kept on talking up every week. He kept on flashing to me. He had a good, strong year. And now he's entering a contract year. And if he puts together a back-to-back years, he's going to get a nice, solid contract. The question is, where is that going to be? Is Atlanta maybe going to try to work out an extension prior to the season, or are they going to let him walk in free agency? They'll have to compete for his services. Either way, I think he's a pretty good linebacker. So if there were one player on this list that you're looking at right now, I think Oluokun would be the best guy to get some type of contract extension. Dante Fowler, he actually reworked his deal where he's got void years on it, so he's actually set to become a free agent. So I don't expect anything to happen with that. Isaiah Oliver, he hasn't really proven himself to earn an extension quite yet, so I think they're going to let him play out this year and see where they think the team stands on him at the end of the season. Obviously, they don't, even though they traded for Hayden Hurst last year, he just hasn't worked out in the NFL, been kind of inconsistent. And they drafted Kyle Pitts. So I don't think there's no way they sign Hayden Hurst unless for whatever reason it really works out with Hurst and Pitts, and maybe they want to run more maybe Arthur Smith, the philosophy with Atlanta, maybe he does want to do more 2 tight end sets. So maybe that does happen. And then Russell Gage, they're definitely not going to give him an extension prior to the season. But now with Julio leaving to Tennessee, he is going to be asked to do a lot more this year and be more of a crucial part of their offense. So, but yeah, out of all those guys, I would think Oluokun would be the guy to watch. And then also too, to keep in mind with those names, as I point out with guys entering the contract year, if things don't work out for Atlanta before the trade deadline, and it's looking like they're not going to make the playoffs, guys like those players can possibly be shipped as rentals to other teams that are competing for the playoffs, and maybe they need some help at those positions. Now I'm gonna go ahead and take a look at these offense. Now, the man himself who created the Prospect Encyclopedia, Roy Countryman, he has done the Falcons section this year. So these are the projected starters from my boy Roy. We'll start at the quarterback position. Matt Ryan, he's been one of the better quarterbacks of the last decade. Of course, he's getting towards the back 9 of his career as he gets older. But people like to discredit him because he's had some, maybe the last couple years hasn't gone his way. But he's still a pretty good quarterback. I mean, look at these stats that I found this summer. Matt Ryan is actually one of 3 quarterbacks to have multiple seasons of 4,500 plus passing yards, 30 plus touchdowns, and 10 or fewer interceptions. The only other 2 quarterbacks that have done that multiple times in NFL history are Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. So he's in Hall of Fame caliber. Those are both Hall of Famers, and he's right there with the only 3 players that have done that in an NFL history. And then as far as since 2018, he's still been a very productive quarterback. He has the most passing yards at 13,971. He's got the second most passing yards per game, 297.3, and he's got the 6th most passing touchdowns. He's got 87. How I view Matt Ryan this year, he's more of that middle of the road type of like fantasy quarterback. I think he's got a high floor entering the year. He might not be the sexiest of picks, but with him, you know what you're getting. You are getting a good quarterback that can give you some good weeks. He's probably going to be in. I know Arthur Smith. He maybe ran more of a running offense because of Derrick Henry, but I don't think he's going to necessarily do that with Mike Davis. So I still think Matt Ryan's going to see plenty of passing attempts. He's definitely not a guy, I'll go ahead and admit, he's definitely not a guy I want to go draft. I don't think I think there's a lot more guys that have a lot more of a higher ceiling. He doesn't have a rushing floor at all, but he's just that guy I think that you can plug in and you know what you can expect. You're going to get at least that minimum amount of points from him. He, to me, though, is a guy, if I do draft, like what I'm trying to do is if I select him where he's going right now, when I get to that back end of the draft, I'm trying to get like, Trevor Lawrence to go with him. Maybe the guy I talked about recently, a Zach Wilson. Maybe a Justin Fields, because maybe Justin Fields doesn't start right away. Maybe you kind of hold. He's a placeholder for maybe a young rookie quarterback, maybe a second-year quarterback. He's a placeholder where he can maybe get you by in that first month of the season. And then once maybe one of the backup you're betting on to be your long-term starter, once they start to come on as a rookie or in their second or maybe even third year, you slide them in and start them over him. That's how I view Matt Ryan this year. Moving on to the running back position, Mike Davis, he was pretty solid for Carolina last year. He's been very solid everywhere he goes. I mean, anytime he's been he's been given the opportunity to take most of the snaps out of the backfield, he's done very well with that. So I don't think that's going to change because, I mean, he's they got an undrafted guy, Javion Hawkins, behind him, Caleb Huntley. And then they got Cordero Patterson too. I'm not sure if he's going to be a running back or more, because like recently in Chicago, he's more used as a running back than a wide receiver. So we'll be interested to see how Arthur Smith wants his offense to deploy him. But other than that, I don't see anybody cutting into the amount of touches that Mike Davis is going to get in this offense. So what does everybody know that's king in fantasy football? It's touches, it's volume of touches. So I think Mike Davis fits that billing. Even though he's going to be getting all the touches, I don't really view him as an RB1. I think he's a very solid RB2 that can give you RB1 numbers when the matchup is right for him. But either way, I think he's going to give you a solid floor amount of points. So if you can get him as your flex, if you can get him as your RB2, I would say go do it. And he's going to come very cheap too. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of people high on him. So I think he can be a sneaky good fantasy pick, especially in those home leagues when a lot of people he's not a household name. So if you're not in like a competitive fantasy league, if you're not with like people in the industry, you're kind of playing with friends, this is going to be a guy you can kind of steal in your draft. So keep an eye on him when you're drafting in the coming month. And then moving on to their wide receivers, obviously this is going to be a much different group compared to last year. For those that have followed me, they know I've been a big Calvin Ridley fan. He was my number one wide receiver in his draft class. I did my year 3 wide receiver video, my first video on this channel. Please go back and watch that. But I used to write articles on the year 3 wide receivers, and Calvin Ridley was my number 1 wide receiver last year. I even pointed that I believe that he was going to finish with more points than Julio last year. Now, I was right, but Julio did get banged up. But hey, I did get right. Let me run my victory lap on that. And yeah, Calvin Ridley blew up in his 3rd year last year. And here's a good stat to know too. Since 2018, he's got the 5th most receiving touchdowns in the NFL. So he's got 26. He knows how to find the end zone. Obviously, now this year will be a lot different for Calvin, because he's the guy. He's the lead dog in the receiver room. So that means he's going to see a lot more double teams than he has in the past. He's going to just have a lot more eyes. He's going to have a lot more defensive coordinators planning their scheme around him to stop him on game days. Because, I mean, like I said, I just talked up Mike Davis, but at the end of the day, Calvin really is the real offensive threat in this offense. So he's going to be the game number 1 focus for defensive coordinators this year. So it'll be interesting to see how he responds, but he's such a good route runner. I think it's gonna work out for him. So Calvin Ridley is a guy I'm very comfortable drafting this year. He could be a wide receiver 1. Now that Julio's gone, I put him in that wide receiver 1 category. And if you want to, if you can find a way to draft him as your wide receiver 2 in your roster, that's even better, because then you got a guy that's a wide receiver 2 in your roster that can give you wide receiver 1 weeks. Other guys in the receiving room, my boy Roy, I always trust him. I don't have a high opinion on Frank Darby, but he's got him currently slotted as one of the outside receivers, so keep an eye on him during the preseason. Russell Gage is somebody that guys are pretty high on. He's been pretty productive whenever Julio's been out of the lineup. So obviously, with Julio leaving, that leaves a bunch of targets available. So Russell Gage is a guy that can possibly emerge as a fantasy football relevant wide receiver. I view Russell Gage as more of a, you put him on you draft him as a backup, and then if he does emerge as a second leading wide receiver in targets in this room, maybe you can slide him in as a wide receiver 3 or a spot filler during bye weeks. One guy I am keeping an eye on, which if you already watched my year 3 wide receiver video, is Olamide Zaccheaus. Roy has him as a backup guy. I think he can compete for a spot in that starting lineup. He was productive in limited fashion last year, and if you go back and watch my year 3 wide receiver video, I'm not going to go on a big spiel, but year 3 guys that enter their 3rd season can see a big uptick in their production. So I'm willing to watch Zaccheaus' role play out. Like, you don't have to go actively draft. I don't even think you can draft. You don't have to actively draft Gage. I'm not honestly sure of his ADP right now. But yeah, those are Russell Gage and Zaccheaus are 2 guys I'm definitely keeping my eye on during the preseason, during those first 2 weeks of the year, and seeing if they're worthwhile on my bench, and see if they can maybe possibly even work their way into a lineup. But out of the wide receiver room, draft Calvin Ridley. Keep your eye on Russell Gage. Keep your eye on Olamide Zaccheaus, and then my boy Roy Countryman thinks Darby could be in line to be able to get a bunch of snaps, which again that could lead to volume of targets. And then obviously the unicorn in this room. Oh, and I guess I just realized I completely misspoken when I said Calvin Ridley is the receiving the threat in this offense. I totally forgot. I don't know why my brain just totally ignored Kyle Pitts. Yeah, Kyle Pitts is right there with them already. That kid is super talented entering the league at the tight end position. Now they can line him as a tight end. They can line him up as a slot. He's going to see so many targets as a rookie tight end. Now, obviously, there is the much noted rookie tight ends typically struggle in their year 1. So is there going to be a learning curve with Kyle Pitts? Who knows? But when you're drafting if you're drafting a tight end at the number 4 slot, that rarely happens. That means you're going to get him the ball. And when Julio Jones is gone, he's going to see a bunch of targets. And when it comes to the tight end position, that's all you can ask for. If your tight end can get to that 8 to 10 target range, he's probably going to get more than that, I think. Yeah, I can see him. I can see him getting more targets than that, based on how the week's game plan is going. But he's gonna see plenty of targets, and that's all you can ask for in tight ends. Tight ends are such a hard position to deal with in fantasy, which is why if you can't get a Kelsey, if you can't get a George Kittle, you want to bet on a tight end that's going to get 8+ targets a week. And Kyle Pitts will be one of those in his rookie year. So I am totally comfortable drafting Kyle Pitts where he is going right now, and betting that he's going to have the best rookie season from a tight end that we've ever seen. And then all he has to do is stay healthy, and I think he can make that happen. Now Hayden Hurst, he is technically his backup. Maybe he can still see a good amount of targets, but yeah, Kyle Pitts is the guy to own. I wouldn't even think about Hayden Hurst. And then if you want to take a quick look at their line has been what's holding them back over the last couple of years. One thing on Matt Ryan, he has been sacked the 3rd most times in the NFL since 2018. So that has to change. And what's weird is, they are just hoping these young guys will step up and mold together as a unit this year. Because if you look at Jake Matthews, Chris Lindstrom, and Caleb McGarry, those 3 guys right there alone are all 1st-round picks. Now you can argue if they should have been 1st-round picks, but at the end of the day, those guys are 1st-round picks. And then Jalen Mayfield, a guy they just drafted this year, and Matt Hennessy, a guy they drafted last year, those are both 3rd-round picks. So you got day 1 and day 2 picks littered throughout this offensive line. So that means, they got the talent there. But obviously guys like, Jake Matthews has struggled with injuries. I believe Lindstrom got hurt Was that him that got hurt? Him and McGarry got hurt like last year, I believe. So these guys have been banged up, so they got to stay on the field, and they don't have really much depth behind them. So if this current starting unit were to go down at all, it's gonna get bad fast. But there's also like it's one of two ways with this line. It's either gonna struggle because like one or two guys are out of the lineup with injuries, or these guys actually hit their talent and this becomes a good unit for Atlanta. The jury's still out on that. I'm kind of in the middle on it. I can see a scenario where this works out for Atlanta, but like I said, I see the scenario where their offensive line struggles. As far as a whole, I mean, I think they got enough pieces to move the ball to be in range. I just wonder if they're going to finish drives. I can see this being an offense that's consistently getting to the red zone, but maybe they're not finding a way to crack the end zone too often. But either way, I think it's an offense that's going to put up yards. I think some games are going to put up a lot of points. And I think this can be a team that's going to be. I mean, this offensive unit's going to be it's a unit that can keep this team as a whole competitive in games throughout the season. Now, taking a look at their defense, again, this is projected starters from my boy Roy Countryman. Go follow him on Twitter at PreacherBoyRoy. Taking a look at their defense, I mean, their defensive front, I mean, they got Grady Jarrett, right, who's one of the better D tackles in the league. Dante Fowler Jr., he's so hit and miss with his play. You never know what you're going to get out of him, but he can still get after the quarterback. Tyler Davidson's the growing guy at the D tackle position. Marlon Davidson's a guy I really liked in last year's class. So they got a few pieces on that defensive front. I don't want to call it a dominant unit, but they got some guys that can hold their own, and they got a couple guys that can get after the quarterback. They just got to do it at a consistent rate to be considered one of the better defensive fronts in the league. And now their linebacker group's quite interesting. Like I already talked him up, I like Foyeside Oluokun. We'll have to see how Deion Jones can play this year. You know, when he is healthy, when he is on the field, he is one of the better linebackers in the league. And Michael Walker is somebody that kind of was a surprising guy that came along last year. As long as these guys can stay on the field, this can form a pretty good linebacker group in Atlanta. And you look at their secondary, man, their secondary's got some interesting guys. So, like, I was a big A.J. Terrell fan. He was a top 5 corner for me, and he really came along as the season progressed last year for Atlanta. I think he's going to have a strong year too. Eric Harris is a good, solid veteran signing from Las Vegas. He's been a good surprise the last couple of years. You know, he's nothing special, but he just gets the job done. We'll have to see if their rookie Richie Grant can make an immediate impact as a second-round pick. Isaiah Oliver, like I mentioned, he needs to take the next step. And we'll have to see how the other cornerback spot works out for Fabian Moreau. Maybe Kendall Sheffield takes the next step in his career. And they also do got Daron Harmon from Detroit, who's been a decent safety over the last few years. As a whole, though, man, this defense, I'm not sure how I feel about it, because it's like, I think they got some. I mentioned this in the Jaguars preview. I like defenses that have at least one playmaker on all 3 levels of the ball. They got Grady Jarrett up front. Dante Fowler, like I said, he at times can be a productive edge rusher. Deion Jones, when he's on the field, is one heck of a playmaker. He could take a pick six like it's nothing. He can fly over the field and make tackles. A.J. Terrell, if he could take that next step in year 2, he's a guy I think could potentially be a playmaker in the secondary. I think they for sure got one in Grady Jarrett. They for sure got one in Deion Jones. If A.J. Terrell can make that next step this year, I think they got three playmakers on all 3 levels of the ball. So I don't think this defense is going to be as bad as it has in the last couple of years, but I will note, you know, the depth behind them, it's a lot of young guys. You see a lot of stars on those names. Like I mentioned, that means they have less than 12 career starts at the NFL level. So they got a lot of inexperience behind the guys they have as starters right now. So if injuries do hit this group, it's going to become a very young, youthful, inexperienced group, which can lead to some growing pains on that defense. But if they can stay healthy, I think they got a good enough defense. in Atlanta to be competitive. And oh man, of course, I forgot to write that in the script last night, and then I'll look that up and explain it really quick. So yeah, and when I look for defenses in fantasy football, I stream defenses. It's always based on the matchups. So when I am drafting in redraft leagues ahead of the season, I like to look at their week one matchup, and I draft based on week one matchups. And as of right now, the Atlanta Falcons, not as of right now, it's not going to change. They are facing the Philadelphia Eagles week one, so it will be interesting to see how their defense performs against that, because I think I haven't did my Eagles preview yet, but Jalen Hurts is a guy I like as a leader, but he will have his struggles as a quarterback. So there could be some turnover potential. We don't know if what that offensive line in Philly is going to look like. So if Grady Jarrett and Dante Fowler can wreak havoc, there is some sack potential. And the wide receiver room, they got Devontae Smith, but we have to see how they perform. So what I'm basically getting at, there's a lot of questions surrounding the Philadelphia offense. So the Falcons defense, to me, I guess, it's like as of right now, I like the matchup. I think it's a matchup I could gamble on. It's a defense where if the ones I want are all taken, I maybe would consider that weekend one matchup against the Eagles and streaming the Falcons. So that is something to consider as you get into drafts in this coming month. So yeah, that's my preview of the offense and defense. Now, as a whole, man, I think a lot more people are down on Atlanta than we should be. And I will say this, when I started researching the roster, going more in depth on it last night, I came walking away with like, I think this Atlanta team can be a lot more competitive than I originally thought. But the biggest issue with me is their depth. Obviously, if Matt Ryan goes down, this whole thing falls apart. I don't think AJ McCarron's gonna hold the ship up. Obviously, if they lose Kyle Ridley or Kyle Pitts, that significantly is going to hurt their passing attack. Even if they lose Mike Davis, then they're depending on like undrafted guys to run the ball. And I just recently talked about the very inexperienced depth that they have on their defense. So I mean, they're very top heavy. But if the top of this Atlanta defense, if the top of this Atlanta team can stay healthy, I think they're going to be competitive. If things go their way, maybe they can compete for a wild card spot. They are more of I can't say 7-9 anymore. They're like a 7-10. They're like a 7-10 to like a 10-7 type of team to me. They're right there in the middle of the pack. They're at least a year away to be a really good team to fill some holes and get more experience and get some depth in some areas to survive that full 17-game schedule. But I think they're definitely going to be competitive this year, and if things go their way, maybe they can slide in as a wild card team and surprise some people. But yeah, that's my preview on the Atlanta Falcons. I hope you guys did enjoy that today. I'm going to continue this video series, and I think the Cincinnati Bengals picked 5th last year. Yeah, that's something maybe I should have known before I recorded this video, so I believe I will be doing the Cincinnati Bengals next. If you like this video, please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, please make sure you do subscribe to my YouTube channel so you know when my preview videos come up. Again, as a reminder, I'm trying to pump out one of these a day for this week. I plan on trying to do one a day up until Friday. I got my friends coming in Friday evening at some point, so I'm probably not going to do a video on Saturday and Sunday. And then next week, I'm going to try to do maybe 2 to 4 videos, but still try to be a good friend and entertain my friends that are visiting. And then once they leave, I'm going to pump out a video a day until I get all 32 teams covered. And then I'll go from there as far as my content creation for this. I hope you guys do enjoy the great start to your week. Again, go like this video, go subscribe my channel, go tell a friend to listen to me, and I'll see you guys later. Have a great day.